Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. Welcome to Two Pastors and a Podcast. Do.
I got to resist the temptation to say good morning. We're late today because school was late and I had a haircut.
Life.
I do want to say I was talking, Dustin sent me some text. I didn't show you this picture. I need to show you this picture. He listens now on his way home and to work. He took a clip.
Oh, no.
It was from our first episode.
Oh, no.
I think I made some sarcastic comment about another church in town, and I told him I have to use this as the pin from now on. You can't see this, but that's incredible. Thank you, Dustin. I got to make it.
We're going to make bookmarks out of that.
Ooh, there we go. Two pastors in a podcast.
Put a pin in it.
Yeah, this is, whenever you see me do something like that, you know I've said something snarky that could get me into trouble.
Oh, man.
And I just sometimes need to do a better job. I got my iPad keyboard out just in case someone says something I can type back. And I feel
that's smart.
very professional.
Now you feel official.
Very professional.
I don't even
morning.
pay attention. I just
Also,
turn my phone off.
I need you to know, all of our listeners, the great many of you.
Hi, Missy.
And Dustin.
And Dustin.
Hey, we got two. I think Dawn listens sometimes. Anyway, it's really cold in here. It's 64.
It's very cold.
The heat's been running at 68 all day, all night, all week.
This close to going to get my warmed up blanket.
Oh yeah, plug it in and charge up. Yeah, we're not that comfortable yet. Right now we got to gain followers, and that's not going to do the job.
Sure. Well, they'll be like, that lady has got it figured out.
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think that's what they ever say about us here. But There it is. Okay, right. So I'm going to start with a question first.
What? I had it already.
I know you'll get yours.
Okay, go.
Don't worry. As long as this doesn't cause an existential crisis.
Sorry about that.
I'm still working through that. We talked about it today. Still working through that. Okay, so last week I started with kind of a downer question. Got to rethink the kind of questions that I asked. So I thought to balance it out, swing the pendulum a little bit. You've been in what ministry for how long now? 3 years?
Yes.
Going on close to?
Yes, 3.
3.
Last
beginning November,
of Advent,
December, or late November. What have you enjoyed most about ministry so far? Last week what was the question? It was something like, what makes ministry so hard? Mm-hmm. What so far have you experienced in ministry that brings a lot of joy and says, I could do this for a long time?
Well, since I've been working through it today already.
There we go.
I love VBS.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite things to do. It's a lot of fun for the kids. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
It's a ton of work.
If you see me the week after VBS, don't talk to me.
Oh, we're not going to.
Yes, you're not going to see me this
year. She
year.
gets 2 weeks off straight after VBS. One of those 2 weeks I mandated.
One of those 2 weeks I will be sleeping.
I gave her an extra week of vacation this year so that Keith could be happy with an extra week later in the year, and she still got 2 weeks off right after
just
VBS.
Just to recuperate from the craziness of VBS.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
But it is a lot of fun. The first year was like, I was looking at my watch. It was telling me what my heart rate was for that night. And I was just like, oh, man, I'm going to have a heart attack if I don't calm down, guys.
Yeah.
But since then, it's been a lot easier. Last year was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And
so what is that? What is that has just makes you say this is like, why is that one of the best things about ministry so far for you?
I think that any time that you have an intensive, focused amount of time with kids to teach them about Jesus, and it's paired with memories that they can keep. So anything that helps them keep the story in their mind, the songs that help. Like these kids are singing these songs. Like people are still singing "Food Truck Party" at me.
Oh, that was such a good one though.
From the first year, like
Food Truck Party.
Mostly it's the manna in the morning.
No, that was a good one too. Oh, we should show everyone the Scout.
Oh yeah.
You want to show? I'll go get him.
Okay.
Go get him.
Anyways, I really love being able to have that time with the kids. I'm talking to you like you're still here, so that people who are listening don't know any different. Anytime that it's on the floor.
The grand reveal.
Scout.
The grand reveal.
Ta-da!
There he is.
This is Scout. He's
Scout
adorable.
in all his glory. He's humongous.
He's like
humongous.
I said, he's the size of Star, and he is, which is my dog.
Look at that. That's so
For
cool.
those
He's
who
on
don't know.
screen. He looks so cool right now. There he is, Scout. So excited.
Yes.
Okay, so intensive time teaching kids about Jesus brings you a lot of life and a lot of joy in ministry. Yeah, cool.
I don't like the discipline side of anything. I don't like being mean, Pastor Caitlin. And VBS is always a lot of fun, Pastor Caitlin.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I was just telling you earlier that Emma's been in VBS for a few years now, and she's already lamenting not being a part of VBS as she gets older, and was asking last night in the kitchen, Dad, when I'm in 6th grade, can I still like do the things that they do? And I'm like, well, maybe, It's funny about VBS as well, because I think I went through a long phase of not being refreshed very well. I think VBS became more of a robotic kind of thing. There was a long period of time where I was very like, it's just lived its time. And then we made this push, a few years ago with our first one, and watching, I think I realized again for the first time that kids are kids. Just the same way now as they were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. They still enjoy the simple things.
Yeah.
If you can pull them out of all the plugged in, overstimulated, I've got to be cool.
Which, let's be fair, VBS is very overstimulating.
But
it's a different kind of
It's a different kind.
overstimulating.
Yeah, it's a different kind. No, I mean, a puppet. It's been so surprising to me to see kids, even some of our older kids, just get into it and just enjoy the childhood side of life. And that gave me a lot of...
And the adults who are doing the puppet.
Oh, yeah. We do have...
Don't let your kids hear that part.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Don't tell the kids that they're not real.
Ella, plug your ears.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, it was just watching them come alive that first year in Food Truck Party and seeing adults. Sometimes in church we can be really stoic. And to see adults learn to come out of their shell, to lead kids with some energy and some openness, re-instilled in me a belief that, hey, if you do this well and you do this right, it can be really beneficial.
I also love that even if like a kid invites a friend from school and it's the only time that they're in church ever, it's so memorable that they're going to remember these stories. They're going to remember that people they might not remember the stories. The seeds are there. They're planted. But they're going to remember that the people of the church came around and they loved on them for a week.
100%.
They were invested in their lives. And
100%.
That's important to me too.
Yeah. I came to love VBS out of a time when I didn't believe in it very much. And I'm grateful for a church and a couple of people that fund it financially.
Absolutely.
Like give a lot every single year. And I think sometimes people don't realize that there's a person in our church that's extremely generous with VBS. And I'm grateful that there are people that believe in it to that point where, hey, I'll go the extra mile to make sure this happens every year. And not just with their pocketbook, but with their time as well. So, yeah, seeing that come to life, it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're so excited about
Yeah,
Scout.
there's Scout.
I'm just going to
The world premiere of Scout on Two Pastors and a Podcast. You saw him here first.
He can sit right here.
There he is. There he is.
Stare
Okay.
at you all day.
Well, there you go. Now, church, hey, and VBS is literally right around the corner.
Yes.
So we're doing it again where we're going to have the preschool and kindergarten group that meets in what time did you meet? 10 o'clock?
I think it was 10 to like 11:30.
10 to 11:30 or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So we're still going to have that group. And that's not just for our church.
Right.
That's open for preschool through kindergartners in our community. Especially, I want to keep reiterating this year. I'm going to weigh my words, but I think I just need to say what I need to say.
Okay.
And not looking for church kids to be VBS shopping,
Right.
but really want to encourage our church to your kids that are preschool through kindergarten. They've got friends, especially friends that don't go to church anywhere. Those are who we should really be focusing on. Hey, you should come. You should come. So parents, pay attention to your kids' friends who don't go to church anywhere. This is where they should be.
It's a great way for your kids to learn how to evangelize, invite people to church, however you want to
100%.
say it. It's a great way to do it.
100%. So don't prioritize, your family members or kids that go to another church.
Right.
Prioritize those that that your kids know that don't. Invite them to VBS this year. And especially for elementary kids, invite your friends. Invite. We would love to see a very full sanctuary
Yeah.
at both times. So that's right around the corner, which means you need to start asking soon. We'll probably be coming out real soon with pre-registration, and
Yep.
we've got training right around the corner. And it's crazy
All
to
the
think
things.
it's not even warm outside yet.
I know.
And your pastor's staff are already like, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We got so
It
much
does.
to
I
do.
will say though, each year it gets a little easier.
It is true.
I don't do quite as much as I did the very first year.
I think this year that I get to be a mad scientist all over again. And I think there's a chance. I'm really excited about it.
If that's what you want to do.
Well, that's kind of, we're going to be talking about science today.
He has the costume
We're
and
gonna-
I'm
No, I'm getting a new costume.
Oh, because it smelled bad.
No, I'm getting the dog mascot costume. I'm going to be a real dog mascot. You can call me
Dr. Dog?
Trailblazer.
Oh.
Trailblazer. Anyway, you're going to see me in a giant dog costume. I promise you. I think they're like $300. I don't even care. That's what I'm buying
Yeah,
for
no,
VBS
you're
this
not
year.
doing that.
Oh, I'm 100% buying that for VBS this year. Are you kidding me? I'll walk around in a giant dog mascot costume. This is going to be incredible.
I'm not doing
The
that.
kids are going to go nuts.
They would.
I'll get one of those ones like the Colts with the big belly that I can flop around a little
no.
bit. Send it. Okay.
All right, my turn.
That's
My turn.
enough for that part. What's your question for Get to Know Your Pastor? What do you
All
call
right.
this section?
I
This
call it
segment of our show.
Get to know your pastor
Oh, okay, fair enough.
with fun questions that I pick.
Oh, last week was
that
not
I
fun.
Googled.
That was very bad last week. So
I'm sorry. I
thank
should
you.
have brought
Thank you
some
for that.
tissues. Okay.
I did feel sad.
You'll like this one
Okay.
because I know you like music.
Oh,
I'm going to ask two.
okay.
First,
Fair.
what type of music do you like the most?
It's gonna go. Depends on the day. I do like some Bone Thugs and Harmony from the '90s. That's all I know.
I've never heard of that before in my life.
I did like that. That's not a genre. That's like a crossroads. That's what that song's called. It's, I'm singing it in my head. Okay. Genre, favorite type of music. It comes down to two things.
Okay.
I'm a huge 90s grunge. That's where I grew up.
Yep.
Christian, especially Christian grunge music. So like that's right around the time when I really started to fall in love with music was like DC Talk, Jesus Freak, and that kind of Christian, audio adrenaline. And yeah, it was just a lot of grunge. I had my hair long and parted down the middle and would headbang.
Wow.
It was a good, especially when the solos came on.
That's
so
good visual.
the 90s kind of grunge Christian music era, by the way, that was the last time Christian music actually did real Christian music. But anyway, here we are.
I love DC Talk.
DC Talk, Audio Adrenaline, Reality Check. The list can go on. I listen to a lot of that. But on the other end of the spectrum, I like 80s hair bands.
feel like there's a theme.
I mean, AC/DC and not Led Zeppelin. That was earlier. What's it? Def Leppard, and I was just listening to. Is it Firehouse or something like that? I just listened to that, and Brad Nowling would really appreciate this moment right here. So anyway, I sometimes hair bands. I don't know. It's not healthy mentally, but I do like that style of
and
music.
You like to bang your floppy
I don't. No, they didn't bang their hair too much. It's more like the mean guitar solos and the high pitched voice and stuff. So there you have it.
Nice.
Okay, what's yours? Taylor Swift.
I do like Taylor Swift. I really like all those 90s bands that you said too, because my brothers were your age in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
You old people. And so I listened to a lot of that because I didn't care. So all those are still my favorite.
90s Christian music was the bomb.com for me.
I love Toby Mac.
Yeah.
I'll listen to Toby Mac any day, every day.
He's fun to listen to.
Yeah, music is not as big of a deal to me as it is to some people, but that's
I don't live and breathe music, but I mean, if I have a choice, that's it. I think actually a modern, a new popular Christian artist is Forrest Frank.
I think Keith listens to him.
Have a good day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Keith loves that
guy. He's just smooth. And it's not like overdoing it with the commercialized worship sound. It's just a guy that wrote music, and he's chill. He's vibing.
You like the chill vibe.
He's got that aura that I appreciate. Oh my
goodness, you've got to stop hanging out with the teenagers.
Anyway, it's like he's just chill. It's smooth. I really appreciate music that's not stressful.
Yeah.
So it just makes me feel lighthearted. So you should listen to him more often. I really appreciate it.
I do like that song.
Yeah.
My parents are...
Go Tell It on the Mountain, by the way, like Christmas songs. They're so good.
My parents used to listen to the oldies station when I was younger, which is like extra old. It's probably like classic now. Yeah. So the 60s music. Yeah. I like that stuff too. That's what I grew up listening to.
It's one of my favorite things about satellite radio when I had it for in my truck. I had it as like a year-long
60s on 6.
Don't pay for it. Maybe you'll pay for it later. And I'm like, never in your life.
Nope.
But
you got it for a year?
Yeah, when I bought my truck. I paid enough. I should have got it for 10 years.
Wow.
But anyway, they had decade stations.
Yeah.
I did appreciate
those
that.
Are fun.
Because, you would be surprised. You can say, I like 80s music. Do you know how 10 years is a lot of years?
It
and
is.
you listen to early 80s versus late 80s music, you're like, that's not 80s music. That's 70s different. Music. But it's like 1981. Same with the 70s. Like early 70s, you think disco. That was a little bit later in the 70s. Early 70s, you got what sounds like 60s music.
Exactly.
And anyway, that was really cool.
It is a lot of fun.
I did like that.
My last question.
Okay.
Has to do with music. This should be an easy one. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, I don't karaoke.
Or just any song that you sing. You don't always have a song stuck in your head?
If I were loose enough and had enough courage to do a karaoke song, it would be, I gotta think of the name of the song real quick. I got competing songs in my head. What's that? It's Bon Jovi. Living on a Prayer.
Oh yeah.
If I could really do that key change and just let it rip and be that loud and that high pitched. If I could do that in a karaoke song, that would be the one I would become legendary in. But I also don't drink alcohol, and I think I would need copious amounts of alcohol to get to the point to try.
Something. So. I'm not brave enough.
Yeah, so I don't do that. So that's not happening.
You know what you could do? Speaking of alcohol, you could just sing tequila.
Yeah, right. No.
Tequila.
Did you see the America's Got Talent where the guy was on there and it was just a loading bar on this TV screen? It's just playing through the song and just a loading bar and you get to the tequila and then it just go again.
So good.
I guess that could be a good karaoke song. So so Living on Prayer I think would be really fun just to kind of belt out. And everyone would be like, yeah. And everyone would sing along. You'd really feel like John Bon Jovi.
Make you feel like you're in an actual band.
Yeah.
Get up there.
I did. I told my girls don't believe this. It wasn't like a big deal. We did it just once a year, but I had a band called Josh and the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We did a Christmas.
Of course you did.
We did a Christmas concert. I did write a Christmas song, and it's a really good one.
We should sing it here.
Next Christmas.
Yep.
Coming to a two pastors in a podcast near you this Christmas season.
Exactly.
Look forward to it. Okay, so you.
Mine's Hooked on a Feeling.
I've got Living on a Prayer stuck in my head. I can't think of Hooked on a...
Hooked on a feeling, da 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 da. I'm believing, da 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 da.
Well,
You're in love. I really get into it in my house. If it's one of those songs that's literally always in my head, always.
oh.
And I'll just go, "Wah," and I'll get to the counter. I'll go, boom, boom. Hooked on a feeling.
Okay. All right. I think if I could speak for my family, I think it would be something out of Mamma Mia. Like when you sing that, I think
Yes.
Mamma Mia type songs, and Carrie would definitely do that.
No, me and Carrie are singing Wicked together.
Oh. Ugh.
All right. That's your get to know your pastor. Hope you enjoyed.
Yeah. 90s grunge and Living on a Prayer.
Very good music.
Yeah. Yeah, if you watch this podcast, what's your favorite kind of music? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Comment down below and let us know what your favorite music genre is and what song you would love to karaoke to.
Yes.
There it is. Get to know your church a little bit better.
Not that I'll see it later.
You
Or
will.
You'll tell me.
It's fine. Okay. So I was having a conversation with Lily on the way to school this morning, and I don't know what got us started down this path. But I told her as she got out of the truck, I was like, this would be a good sermon. And she was like, oh, Dad. And I'm like, no, I'm being serious. She thinks I'm sarcastic all the time, and she thinks it's kind of weird. I'm like, no, I'm being serious. Like, I think you could. She's like, okay, I'm going to go to school. And she got out of the truck. So I thought if my teenage daughter doesn't think that it's a good sermon, we could at least talk about it now.
Fair enough.
Two pastors in a podcast. Caitlin has no idea what's coming, by the way.
Not a clue.
So
My favorite place to be.
yeah. Oh, if you want to, we're going to be in Philippians chapter 1. That's where we're going to be if you want to get there. And I don't know how well the passage fits, but it's at least a good passage to read today. I don't have a solid plan today. This is going to be one of those two pastors in podcasts where we just get to chat a little bit and see where it goes. So I was talking I came across some scientists. I love science. Thinking of VBS when I say maybe I'll be there. I do love science. Science is not concerned about proving whether there's a God or not. It's just about learning how the world works. And I really appreciate learning more about how God created the world and how complex it is and how cool it is. So I love science. I love growing in knowledge in that way. So I was listening to scientists, not a Christian scientist. I wouldn't call an atheist scientist by any means. Perhaps, I think in his own words, it's more of I just haven't seen any reason to believe that anyone presented is really there or whatever. So maybe you might call him some kind of agnostic at best. But anyway, that's okay. He's talking about hot and cold. And I used to think that really like the temperature was like cold was like the measure of heat coming off of your skin or something like that. But when you think of hot and cold, you think of two separate things. There is hot and there is cold. And I was listening to this guy talk, and I realized that that was wrong. That cold, there is no such thing as cold.
It's the absence of heat.
Yeah. It's just all heat. Which, you stop and you think, and that's what I was telling Lily, you stop and you think about it, you're like, no, that's cold. or it's cold outside, that's a thing. But cold doesn't exist because heat or lower or the range of temperature is all dependent on how much heat is being produced by the atoms or the molecules that work in a space. So heat is you got all these molecules and a lot of action in them, right? And so the faster that things move in a space, the hotter it gets. And he mentioned that no matter, there's no limit on how hot anything can get. Things can go faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. But there is an absolute limit to how cold something can get. It's called absolute zero. But all that means is that those molecules or atoms or whatever aren't moving anymore.
Right.
So they're not generating any heat.
And you can't go below not moving.
Right. There's no negative. Well, maybe there could be negative movement. I don't know. Maybe they haven't figured it out yet. Like time travel. But anyway, neither here nor there. I always found that really impactful. So I was telling Lily, I was like, yeah, I made this comment. I said, yeah, so really, like, cold is just, the only way you get cold is when you stop moving. As soon as things stop moving, then it's cold. Or you slow down, it gets colder. Slow down, you get colder. But the faster things go, hotter, hotter, hotter. I really appreciate that view of science. And that's when I said, when I told Lily, I was like, yeah, it's, things only get really cold when they stop moving.
Right.
That's when I said, ooh, I think I can preach on that. I think we can preach on that.
Okay.
So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready to figure this out? This is good practice because on Palm Sunday is Family Sunday, which will be our second sermon in the sack. So this is a good warm-up. The warm-up to sermon in the sack.
That was a good one.
I know. I didn't even plan that. The molecules are running.
Do you feel really disappointed in yourself right now?
For not planning that?
No, for that pun.
No.
It was really
I feel
good.
like the aura I'm giving off is really warm right now.
All right.
That's right. Okay, so why would I want to preach on that? So I was thinking about, well, what text could kind of, and I was bouncing between a text in Philippians and one in 1 Timothy chapter 4. And both of them actually work really well. Maybe we could just thumb to Timothy in a second and read that one too. But here's what Paul's saying, and this is like a love letter. This is a friendly letter to a congregation that he's just so proud of and so happy with and brings him a lot of joy, even though he's imprisoned at the moment. He's just so happy. And so he says, I thank God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day until now. I'm confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to think of this way about all of you because you hold me in your heart. For all of you share in God's grace with me, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the compassion of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, and this is what I was kind of thinking, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight. So I want to hang on to that phrase. Love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight to help you determine what is best so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless. And then there's this too, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Christ Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God. Let's go to Timothy real quick because I think I like that one as well. I'll read it. So can't get too much Bible, I don't think. Although, good luck finding it.
I'll let you find it.
Yeah, I'm not going to find it. Okay, just going to stick with this one. I'm not digging.
You could go to the front, find the page.
No. So one of the things that I think Paul really appreciated about the Philippians wasn't just that they had come to believe in Jesus because of his message.
Right.
it was how they were progressing and growing in their faith. And I think he kind of spurs them on to that in this moment where it's like, keep doing this, keep going this way. And I think it's later in Philippians where he talks about pressing forward. And there's this constant movement in the letter to the Philippians of this downward movement of becoming and having the same mind in you that is in Christ Jesus, but also this kind of upward movement of constantly drawing closer to Jesus. And I want to think that there's no end, there's no cap on how tight or close, or for scientific language, for how hot your relationship with God can be. And I think that the experience of that kind of increasing heat, increasing closeness, or decreasing heat, slower, it all is contingent on the movement that we're making in our spiritual lives. I think of people who are stagnant in faith or feel like they're distant from God. We often try to like find and prescribe all the various ways that it might be, but maybe most of the time it's just, well, if there's no such thing as cold, then maybe there's no such thing as, well, I'm just distant from God right now. Maybe it's like heat, where it's just, that only happens when you're not moving. That's what I think I see, that I think Paul really loves about these Philippians, is they're sharing in the gospel. Their love continues, and he keeps praying for it to continue growing and overflowing, their knowledge overflowing, their insight overflowing. There's movement happening there all the time. That really kind of hit me when I was talking to Lily this morning. Because I think we hear it often as pastors that I'm not feeling it right now. We talk to our kids, from a kids pastor or family pastor perspective, like, how do you teach kids that there's no end in sight to just how close you can get to God, and how that movement can go faster and faster and faster and hotter and hotter and hotter and harder and hotter, and break this kind of idea that that distance with God is a real thing that just is caused by some kind of external factor, when maybe in reality we're more in control of our closeness with God than we realize.
It might be easier to explain it to kids than adults. Maybe. And I say that because they are very literal thinkers.
Okay.
Especially in the elementary age range. Trying to teach kids hypotheticals or metaphors is a little bit harder. That's why parables work so well for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a story that they can grasp onto and it makes sense in their minds. But when you think about how a child's mind works, if they love Jesus, that is, for them, that's as close as they can get.
I don't think that's just childlike. I think that's a lot of adults in church too.
So it is teaching them, you can get further. You can get closer. You might not see it right now, but I promise you it's out there.
Yeah, you think of like the camp experiences. You go to camp and people come back. What do they say? I'm on fire.
Yeah, that's your mountaintop experience.
And then what happens? You get, then it's like that fire dissipates, and you get a little more distant. You're not feeling, and then you kind of get hooked on that high, that camp high. Like you got to go back because you want to get lit on fire again. Revivals were the same way.
Yeah.
You'd have week-long revivals, and all of a sudden, like everyone's on fire for the Lord, and then revival's over, and that's why you have revivals every year, because you're trying to heat everyone back up. But so that's actually a really good thought is, well, what's different in a camp week or a VBS week or a revival week compared to every other day? Why would you feel on fire all of a sudden? What's the catalyst in there?
Ooh. Probably a little bit of different expectations than your everyday life.
Oh.
You go to camp, you go to revival, you go to VBS, and you know that you are there, and you're open, and you're like, I'm going to get closer to God.
There's something's going to happen here. I'm going to experience God. I'm going to feel passionate about God this time. I'm going to see God move that week. So yeah, I think that's really good. So on one side, expectation, even on a Sunday, So what differentiates a typical Sunday for a churchgoer and a revival day? It might literally be that expectation. Do I go in on a Sunday morning expecting that same camp experience or that revival night or whatever? Do I go in thinking today, when I wake up, Saturday night before I go to bed, when I wake up on Sunday morning, do I wake up and I'm like, oh man, my life's going to heat up a little bit today? Or, do I have that same expectation? Right. Okay, so expectation's one for sure. I think one of the things that I see as well is you look at camp, let's say, it's every day, all day. Your feet are moving, your hands are moving, you're talking, you're learning, you're diving in. Like your whole life in a revival week or a camp week or, whatever, VBS, like you're just inundated. And it would make sense that like molecules moving faster and faster and faster, they get hotter and hotter and hotter. You're around this all the time. You're constantly, your mind's churning, your spirit's churning, your body's churning. And then all of a sudden, boom, here it is, this experience with God in your life. And you're like, mountaintop, mountaintop.
Absolutely. I would also say that community is another one. You go to these experiences and you're with other people of God.
Oh, that's so good.
And when you go back out into the world, you're not always constantly with those people.
That's so good. When I think I'm going to keep going back to science here because it really does work here. You don't get heat with one molecule. There's got to be at least two moving together to get that, to radiate that kind of energy that produces heat. Okay. So on one side, or point one, you've got expectation. I come in expecting, hey, it's camp week. It's revival week. God's going to be moving, and I'm ready for that to happen. Two, you're constantly moving like energy, and you're inundated with it, and that produces that warmth, that heat, that relationship deepening. And then three, it's also not by yourself. Good luck having a revival by yourself at home.
Yeah.
But you get surrounded by God's people who are moving closer to God and inundated with it and filled with expectation. And now all of a sudden you're all feeding off of each other, and that heat kind of picks up and radiates from there too. Yeah. Most of the time we don't feel that heat. So what happens? What happens that causes us to cool off? And when you kind of look at it, like we have a lot more cool days than hot days, especially with the way that we built church. So how, maybe what I want to play with today is how do you keep the fire burning and not just in special times? Because I definitely want to say this, that you only grow cold in your relationship with Jesus when you stop moving.
You did a sermon last year about kind of about this. And you encouraged people to fill up their cups and keep filling it up when they're in that season of, was it blessing or whatever it was?
I was talking about Joseph
Yeah.
and Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And store up the 7 years of plenty so that
that one.
in the 7 years of drought, you've got food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like Joseph didn't stop moving.
No. No. In the days, because, I mean, his whole life. Think about it. He's just a dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
And his brothers are jealous. He probably could have kept it to himself a little bit better, but here we are.
That's not what
they plot to kill him and throw him in a well. He's sold into slavery. Then he does really good there. He doesn't stop moving. He could have stopped at any point. He doesn't stop moving. And then Potiphar's wife makes accusations. He's thrown in jail, and he should, maybe he stops moving there, but he keeps drawing closer to the Lord and doing his best. He keeps moving, and then he interprets the dream of the cupbearer and the chef or whatever, and hey, remember me, and they forget the one that lives. Is it the cupbearer that lives? I can't remember.
I think it's the cupbearer.
I think it's the cupbearer. Anyway, he completely forgot about Joseph, and so your relationship with God grows colder in a cold dungeon over time. No, David just keeps working, and then Pharaoh finally gets word to these dreams that no one can interpret, and hey, I remember this guy from years ago that I forgot. He's way back in the dungeon, so he brings him out, and he does this, and that was his advice. Was like, you're going to need to store up for 7 years because there's drought coming. Make sure in the good times you have as much stored up as possible so you can make it through the bad times of life.
And I think that's, we're always going, it's human nature to slow down.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's human nature to slow down.
And so when you are in those times of drought, or when you're in those times of wilderness, whatever it is that you want to compare it to, what is it that keeps you going? What is it that's in your body saying, I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep getting hotter, getting closer to God, even if I am in these times of drought,
I think you pointed out something that's so good. The third point is community. I think that's so important. When you're feeling cold, one sure way to make sure you keep getting colder in your relationship with God is be secluded.
Absolutely.
Stop coming to church, or stop coming to discipleship, or stop coming to fellowship events, because it's easier to sulk in your disconnect than to actually keep your feet moving, believing that if I keep moving, I'll get warm. Instead, we just kind of, it's easy to seclude and try to do it by ourselves. You're not going to get hot in your relationship with God by yourself.
Yep. And it is human nature to seclude and to be by yourself. So do the opposite.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I came across a pastor hot take this week. Yeah, the big churches always do this stuff. I'm fine with it. I don't care. But sometimes there's this ultra trendy feel in some churches. I call it hipster. That was the era I grew up in, post-college anyway. Anyway, it was a pastor hot take. He asked one of the pastors, he's like, what's your ministry hot take right now? And the guy thought about it for a second, and he said, get rid of announcement time. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, people can say that. I mean, yeah, why not? His reasoning was really surprising to me. He said, if you really think about it, you look around, you give your announcements, like everyone's on their phone anyway. Like, who's actually listening to announcements? They're all on their phone. They're on their phone? Like, we became okay with this? Like, when is that okay?
Maybe my hot take is leave your phone at home during church.
Listen to my church. A lot of people know this. Maybe sometimes you don't. On Sunday, my phone disappears. I don't want anything to do with it. If you text Carrie, if you really need something, she'll get to me. But I don't carry that thing around.
I think most people know that. because I get texts every now and then from people in the church. Like,
Yeah.
tell Josh this.
I just don't want to be distracted. I want to be present with my people. I want to be sensitive to what God's doing, and I can't do that with a dumb phone in my hands.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. But no, my point in sharing that is not picking on a big church or anything like that. It is easier. You know, big churches kind of, any church, big, small, it doesn't matter, medium, we can put off a persona that everything's great and you're going to grow here and the Spirit's moving in our church and whatever. And sometimes it's through a big band and sometimes it's through like a Southern preacher that, you know, breathes weird when they talk. But you know, sometimes it's charisma where he's speaking gibberish. But I heard that and my first thought was, are your people really growing closer to the Lord? If on our 1 day a week, our 2 hours a week that we cordon off for God and God's people, if they can't stay fully engaged in that time, are they really heating up for the Lord in that time? And I just don't think it's true. I mean, I don't think that's possible. When you're not fully engaged, when you're not moving, when you're just staying connected to the world, I don't think you're getting your relationship with Jesus as a church any further ahead. You might put more butts in seats, but there's a lot of churchgoers in America these days. Very few Christians, but a whole lot of churchgoers. And I think the church has made a mistake of letting people off the hook. Like, yeah, you know, let's change us because our people are so disengaged that they're on their phone during that portion anyway. So why even do that part if they're just on their phone the whole time? To me, that's not moving. You can be busy doing a lot of other things, but doing a lot of other things doesn't necessarily mean you're moving towards the Lord. And so I think when you get to a point where you can sit and stare at your phone a whole church service, you don't have a hot relationship with God. Your church doesn't, if a lot of people are doing that.
You have to have the honesty to look at your life and say these things are these are the things that are slowing me down.
Oh,
these are the things that are cooling me off.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. What are those things? That's okay. If I could connect that with my own struggle this morning, I recognized that over the past couple of weeks, I've spent more time paying attention and reading the news than I have my Bible. Not that I haven't read my Bible at all, but I'm devoting way more time. And I started to feel my mind not in a good place in that regard. I'm starting to think about it more, what's happening with this person doing this and this, what's going to happen with this or that. And I think, I'm not saying I'm disengaged. Like, I think there's very big, important conversations happening right now. So finding that balance, but something was out of kilter, out of balance. And that was, I was spending way more time in the news than I was in scripture. And I feel like my relationship with God's starting to cool off. But my passion for the other things is starting to heat up. I don't want that again.
Yeah.
I've been on fire on the political side of things before. What a miserable way to live your life, where you just have to be involved in that all the time. That is a miserable way to live your life. And I think the heat that you feel is akin to hell. All that passion, all that heating up, just imagine all of eternity just being angry all the time. That to me, that's...
I always liked, I don't listen to the radio anymore.
No, that's good.
But I always liked, K-Love had that, like, 90 days of Christian music only. Where they challenge, I don't know if it's like some amount of time, but they encourage their listeners to only listen to Christian music for a certain amount of time and see how it would change their mindsets, change how they lived, change how they felt. And it never failed. When you listen to people's testimonies, they're like, yeah, I'm way more focused on God than I was before. Like, it really does matter the things that we're putting into our brains, that we're listening to, that we're watching, that we're eating. Like, if it's not heating you up than it is slowing you down and heating you up in a different direction that you don't want to go.
Right there. Like maybe this is what there's no such thing as cold.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to be hot for one thing or hot for another thing.
Mm-hmm.
You will be actively moving towards something in your life. Jesus, I just read it just the other day, that passage on money, and like you cannot serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and serve the other, or love the one and hate the other. Like it's like the sermon I preached on tithing a while ago. Like everyone tithes.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone tithes. It's just a matter of who gets your first and your best.
Yeah.
Every single time. So, yeah, hot doesn't really exist, or cold does not exist as a temperature. There's no such thing as cold, but there is a such thing in the Christian life, or in the life of faith, of being hot for something, of the temperature changing. The temperature for your passion and your desire for God could be at 30 degrees. That's still, by the way, a movement, but there could be, and your passion for politics or entertainment or your job or whatever it might be could be 95 degrees. Mm-hmm. But you are moving faster in one direction or the other.
Makes me think of like hot, cold, light, darkness. Like there's no such thing as darkness. It's just the absence of light.
Oh, yeah.
It's like as the earth turns, you're just seeing less and less light.
Yeah.
So what side of the world are you going to be on?
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's colder over there, by the way, in the dark.
Yeah.
Especially in the winter.
It is all the time. All the time. I think that's where again, sitting down talking to Lily today, I just witnessed, and I've witnessed in my own life, it's not just external, but kind of coming to this realization of your closeness with God. First and foremost, you need to measure if it feels cold. You need to measure your amount of activity towards the God that you say you believe in and you love. Mm-hmm. If you feel like your relationship with God's not growing, if you feel stagnant or like it's cooled off, like you're coming down the mountain from camp or revival, and 6 weeks later you're like, I just don't
feel it anymore.
I see it, or I just got baptized, and then 2 months, 3 months later, it's like you're right back in that kind of cold spot. Mm-hmm. I think the first thing to stop and do is assess what you're doing. To your point earlier, like have some humility. Am I actively moving towards God or not? Because I don't think our relationship with God is a passive thing.
Right. I was just going to say that I also think that if that's what you're doing, if you really want to find out, then you need to ask the people who are around you as well. Like really dig into the community part and say, like go to your pastor and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Can you see anything that's wrong or that's unaligned with God right now? Because I do think that God uses his community to tell you if there's something misaligned.
You bring up a tough component of the Christian life. It's one that we do not like in modern Christianity, and it's been shelved for a long time in Protestantism in particular, is the idea of accountability. Mm-hmm. It's a icky word in our minds because we're a very postmodern society. Who are you to tell me what's right and wrong?
I saw a funny post the other day. It was like, only God can judge me.
Oh, yeah.
And the person's like, I don't know. I'm going to fail that test. Tell me if there's something wrong, because if God judges me, I'm going to fail.
Yeah, like it's one thing to say when Jesus says, do not judge, for with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. And I think sometimes we forget that in judgment is a final word over somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not called to say, Caitlin, you are this for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's just who you are.
Right.
I don't want to be held to that standard. But you do know people based on their fruit.
Yeah.
It's not judgment to look at your brother or sister and say, the fruit you're producing right now is not good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not judgment to go to someone and say, you know what, Caitlin, you are just really angry right now. And I don't think that's bringing out God's will in your life. I think there's some things I want us to pray about, or that you should consider. That's on the outside with people that really know you.
Yeah.
But you're really saying opening yourself up to that is important. And that is going to someone that you trust and saying, my relationship with God feels cold right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel distant. What have you seen in my life or coming out of my life that you think might be having me going faster in another direction than I am to God?
Mm-hmm.
And allowing that person the freedom to say, well, okay, here's what I've seen. And then you have an opportunity to start moving in a better direction.
Which is very scary.
Yeah?
It's a scary thing to do.
Yeah?
But I think it's important because we're kind of like what I said on our last podcast. We're fighting for souls here. We're not trying to mess around.
No, not at all.
I think that once you get past the fear and you realize that you have two options coming up, we're all going to die. It's going to happen. You have two options.
That's right.
You probably should use all the help that you can get.
Yeah. I want on this side of heaven, I want my relationship with God to constantly be on fire.
Yeah.
And it can be.
Mm-hmm.
It legitimately can be. You don't have to go through ups and downs. Now, will you? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
There will be seasons in your life. To your point with Joseph, in your good times, fill up the storehouse. Mm-hmm. Read and pray and study as much as you possibly can, which tends to be our opposite. When times get really good, we tend to put God further and further behind. It's like fill up the storehouse as much as you can. There are going to be seasons in your life that dip, that challenge your faith, that challenge your walk with Christ, that make life difficult in general. That's going to be when your mind starts to pull to the forefront those memory verses and those prayers and those worship services and those ecstatic mountain moments that you're like, okay, I want to give up right now, but I know if I keep my feet moving, I'm going to come out on the other side okay.
Yep.
So I think that's important. But the normal Christian life right now is like this, and then and then a year later, wham, and then your Christian life does not need to look like a once per minute heartbeat.
Right.
It doesn't need to look like that, but you can be up here.
It can plateau a little bit.
And hopefully as you journey with Christ, the little valleys become more and more spaced out as opposed to so much of this right now. And that's what I think I'm pulling from, just experience and what my desire for my church and for Christian folk is no longer feeling those valleys as often as we do, and not losing hope when we do find ourselves in the valley and giving up even. But like you said, finding ways to be like, okay, if this is happening, then where are my feet going that's not towards God, that maybe I just need to make some shifts in my life, and then my body starts moving in the community and things start to warm up again.
I think that's probably one of the reasons why the Nazarene Church is so intensely wants everybody to be entirely sanctified.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is being perfect love with God and perfect love for your neighbor all in one. And when you're like that, you are on fire for God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when Mike Yule talks about him being entirely sanctified, he's like, if I could paraphrase him, he was really miserable with the ups and downs and getting to a point where it's never dipped. And you see it in him and Pam both, just this constant It's not that they don't have valleys,
Yeah.
but their passion and love for God never wanes.
Mm-hmm.
Their belief in God never wanes. They just, it's kind of constant.
They're already up here.
Yeah, their valley, by the way, is like, it's like my high.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man. I just, I just think that it's important for Christian people to start recognizing this in their own lives and start yearning. I think what you bring up with sanctification so good is yearning. That I'm not just hot once a year on a special service, but that my relationship with God, and the words of Paul for the Philippians is that my love may overflow more and more and more, with more knowledge, with full insight, just this constant kind of overflowing relationship with God, which I think, if you just think of heat, you're only going to get cold when you're not moving.
Yeah.
And as we kind of discovered, you're always moving. It's just a matter of which one you're going to be closest to or not. So what do you think? So you mentioned accountability. So let's give our friends a couple of practical things that we could start doing in our daily life. That, one, if we're on the mountaintop, we're storing up. But two, if we're a little cool, might start building up some heat in our relationship with God in the church today. So let's give our friends some practical advice. Where would you start?
Read your Bible every day.
Yeah.
And grow. That's the song that Ella sings to me for Bible study.
Okay. It's a simple one.
It is. Also, one that I really like, I'm not good at doing it. And I tell myself all the time I need to start. But I like having a spiritual journal.
Oh, yeah.
I like being able to write down the things that I've prayed for, things that God has allowed to happen in my life, maybe some bad things too, but mostly like we have spiritual amnesia.
Yes.
We'll forget the good things and focus on the bad things.
Oh, good.
And if you're anything like me, that happens a lot because I'm pessimistic sometimes. But a spiritual journal allows you to look back and say, no, God worked there.
Okay, good. That's awesome. A lot of times we keep prayer journals, if here's all the prayer requests. Definitely here's what God has been, when you think about the whole Joseph thing and storing up in the good times, that's so good. Keep a spiritual journal that indicates not simply the bad things or your prayer requests, but what has God done in your life throughout the year? What's God doing right now? What are the little things that you notice that you're going to forget in a week? But in a moment, you're like, oh, I think that was God speaking to me. And maybe, when you start to feel distant or cold, what a great storehouse to be able to go back to and say, oh, yeah, I remember that moment. So, there's your first thing. That's great. From your family pastor herself. Keep a journal. You call it a spiritual journal. Call it whatever you want. Maybe it's whatever it might be. But, keep a list of what God's been doing.
Call it your God sighting journal.
Something
fun.
Yeah. That's so good. Do that. Easier said than done, I'm sure. I'm sure. I was thinking we got our annual church meeting next Sunday because we had to push it back. All that means we're always looking back over the past year, and we're trying to figure out like what we did, and we got to give this report to everyone. And every year I say, oh, it's such a good exercise because the hard stuff, the bad times stick out way more as a sore thumb in your memory than the good stuff. And it's a big exercise to go back and weed through all the bad stuff because most of the time what you get as a pastor is we're not doing enough. We didn't do this, or we're not doing this, or every pastor deals with this in every church. It's really fun every year at the annual meeting to say, oh, hey, look at what we've accomplished over this past year. Look what God's done through us. I was just counting. We did 8 baptisms this year, and we've got, it's like, well, we did do a lot. We did. So really good. Good practice. Keep a list of that. Go back to it when you're feeling cold, especially when you're feeling cold.
And not only is it going to be something that I'll look back and say, oh yeah, things aren't as bad as I thought they were, but also it'll help you get back on fire because you're like, oh, if God did this, then he'll do this too. Like it'll be good.
Yeah, you don't lose hope that way.
Yeah.
And not to belittle the Bible reading or to gloss over it, but
Right.
I think that's so important too. This morning when I realized I'm starting to get passionate about something else. I sat down this morning and I was like, I'm going to read. I need to focus more on scripture reading. That really helps me keep moving my heart and mind moving in a better direction. So I sat down and read like 4 or 5 chapters and just dwelled in the quiet of the living room while Lily was getting ready. So whether that's the 5 by 5 by 5, like the people that are working through that, I just need you to know, like, we're getting a lot of really good feedback from folks who are doing that. I'm getting questions from people that I'm like, oh, I can tell they're reading the 5 by 5 by 5. So just figuring out the simplest way to build that daily rhythm of scripture reading into your life is really important, to make sure that you're moving and getting hotter in your relationship with God and not cooler.
I think that's another thing you just said, the daily rhythm.
Yeah.
It is so easy to just turn yourself into survival mode.
Oh, yeah.
Because of all the things that are happening in our lives and the craziness that's happening in the world. And you're like, oh, I'm just surviving. Having a daily rhythm that you can fall back on is so important, because at this time, I'm going to read my Bible from here to here. I'm going to pray from here to here.
Yeah.
Even if it's like breakfast, lunch, and dinner prayer, or before school, after school, whatever it is that you need to do to create this rhythm in your life, that's going to help you focus on the main thing.
Yeah.
Refocus on the main thing.
You're centering your life around God and the church and the relationship. Your weekly rhythms too matter just as much as your daily rhythms. When you actively center yourself around something, that changes everything. Most of us, I think, center our lives around work and dinner and kids' activities kind of rhythm. Like, what do you do? First thing I do, I get up in the morning, use the restroom, brush my teeth, I make my pot of coffee, I read the newspaper, I get ready for work, and then I'm out the door and I work from such and such time to such and such time. I've got my lunch hour that always happens at this time, and then after this, I go pick up the kids, and then I do this, and then we can make dinner, and then there's this, and a lot of the rhythm of our lives is built around production, but not necessarily intimacy. So I think when you order the daily rhythm of your life, when you plan your day around intimacy with the church and God and His presence, whether that's through scripture or prayer or whatever, that changes everything in your life. Hard to do, admittedly. It's a discipline for sure. But so we're saying, order your life around God. Dive into scripture, spend time in prayer every day, that daily kind of rhythm. Spiritual journal. Store up the little things when you see God do something, whether that's in your neighbor or out at Walmart or your kids say something that really stand out to you. Jot that down so you have it for later. I think that's so good. Yeah. I'd also say, like, be careful what you're putting in your mind and in your body. And I mean that. Food, drink, and entertainment, or whatever you have on TV, I think those things will channel heat one way or another. Yeah. I would really encourage Christians right now to get off the news.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to be disengaged. I'm saying right now there's a lot of heat going out. And it's really easy to get hot. And I think finding alternative ways to stay engaged that don't take away your Christ-likeness, I think is really important right now. So if you don't have that daily, like if you're not centered and grounded in Christ, your best bet is to unplug for a little bit.
I like the idea of fasting from the news.
Yeah.
Lent is coming up.
Yeah.
If you take out your daily hour of the news, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and you read the Bible and pray with your family during that time, you're going to heat up for God.
I've been playing around with the idea for our Lent series this year on the 5 weeks. We're going to do it because Palm Sunday will be Family Sunday. Is exploring over Lent what it means to each week love the Lord your God with all your heart. Mm-hmm. First one, soul. Second, mind and strength in those 4 weeks. And then the fifth one being loving your neighbor as yourself. And basically kind of toying with this idea of in Lent, it's about getting rid of those things that don't allow you to love God with all of this or your neighbor as yourself. I'm filling your life up with those things that enable you to do that. So I think that's what we're really getting at today. And I thought just, it's kind of incredible how God can use non-religious figures sometimes to help you learn a greater truth about who God is.
Hate is a strong word, I know, but I did not like my history class.
I know you didn't.
I'm done with it. So you guys don't have to hear me complain about it anymore.
The Office is much lighter, much more joyful.
But at the end of the class, we had to answer the question, how do we see God using people, events, and world history to further his purposes, to further his plan, however he wrote out the question? God is always going to use what happens in the world. And we can be a part of that.
Yeah, sometimes it means you got to be a part of it in a peacemaking kind of way, which might mean you suffer with Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done right now, even with things that are going on making sure you're coming alongside of people who are marginalized and afraid and that kind of thing without taking a stance on anything. I think that's still important. But
that's like the big thing right now, right? Is that we feel like we're being oppressed or whatever, and that we have to take the stand for God. And sometimes, hot take.
Oh, here we go.
Sometimes it's important to sit back and listen first. Sometimes being a peacemaker means love your enemies.
Yeah, I think.
Pray for them.
Yeah. And I think when we say listen, and I think we're saying listen to the voice of the Father and listen to the Spirit.
Yeah.
It all ties in with right now. Because if you're listening to the wrong voice, you're going to get hot for the wrong things. If Christians are going to get upset about something, it better be for the right thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Jesus is a good example of that. But well, friends, I hope you find it helpful. I like science, and I just think it's cool that God can even speak to a pastor in Crawfordsville, Indiana, from a guy that doesn't know me from Adam, who doesn't believe in Adam anyway. To kind of give me a bigger picture into faith and life and the journey together. And I hope and pray that God enables me and is able to use me to help the people of my church just
to get
those
closer.
Valleys become further and further apart, where you just, like Mike and Pam, where the valleys that you feel with God tend to be pretty high comparatively to everyone else. So I just want to encourage everyone that if you feel up and down all the time, or if you feel like you're constantly in the valley, know that growing closer to God isn't a passive thing. Yeah. You can start making moves in your life that will start drawing you closer to the Father again. You can't do it alone, so you got to do it with community. You got to do it with the tools that God's given you through Scripture and prayer and Sunday worship and refuel and fellowship times. And I mean that, all of it. Like if you're cooling off with God in our church at Harbor, then show up.
Yeah.
period. Even when you don't feel, just keep showing up and prioritize those things. Get the daily rhythms, keep a spiritual journal, those kinds of things. And you'll be surprised at how much closer your relationship with Jesus will be by the end of the year. So,
Yeah.
they have it.
Very good.
Well, to our listeners today, thank you for watching. And we'll catch you on the next episode on Thursday. We'll see you guys later. Love you.
Bye. 2 pastors and a podcast. Do, 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 do.